My daughter's fiancé pushed me in the chest and yelled, "Get lost, you old fool." He didn't know I was her father. At that moment, my daughter came out onto the porch, gave him an icy stare, and said quietly but chillingly, "You're finished." And his perfect life began to crumble right then and there. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. Sarah's BMW sat crooked in my driveway, one wheel on the grass, edging. Not like her. She was the one who color-coded case files and arrived 15 minutes early to every appointment. I watched from my study window as she climbed out, smoothing her skirt with both hands, staring at my front door like it might bite. "Come in, honey," I called when she finally rang the bell. "Door's open." She stepped inside and I noticed immediately the tension in her shoulders, the way her purse strap twisted around her fingers. Late afternoon light slanted through the study windows, catching dust motes that danced between us as we hugged. "Coffee?" I asked. "Sure, yes, coffee would be great." I'd been about to offer bourbon, our usual Saturday ritual, when she stopped by, but something in her expression made me pivot. In the kitchen, I ground beans while she stood in the doorway, not quite entering, not quite leaving. Back in the study, I cleared blueprints from the corner of my mahogany desk. Another historic renovation project. This one, a crumbling antebellum mansion on Trad Street. The owner wanted modern amenities hidden behind preserved facades. Tricky work. Work I loved. Sarah took the coffee, but didn't drink. Just held the cup, letting steam curl around her face. "So," I said, settling into my leather chair. "What brings you by on a Saturday? Case prep?" "No, actually." She set the cup down on a coaster, adjusted it again. "I wanted to ask you something. Would it be okay if Brandon joined us for Thanksgiving?" "Of course. I've been hoping to spend more time with him." "Why wouldn't it be okay?" Her gaze drifted to the window. The live oak in my side yard was losing leaves, branches scratching against the glass whenever wind picked up. "I just wanted to make sure. You know how you value our family traditions." "Sarah, he's going to be family soon. I want him to feel welcome here. This is his home, too." She looked back at me then, something flickering behind her eyes. "You always see the best in people, Dad. Is there something I should be concerned about?" "No. No." The brightness in her voice was forced, artificial. "Just wedding stress. You know how it is." I didn't actually. Her mother and I had married at City Hall with 2 witnesses and dinner at a pizza joint afterward. Best day of my life. But I nodded, took a sip of my own coffee. Let the silence stretch until she filled it. "Have you two settled on a date yet?" "Next summer. July probably. Brandon wants something big. Elegant venue. 200 guests. And what do you want?" She paused, cup halfway to her lips. "I want whatever makes sense." Strange answer. Not I want what he wants or I want something intimate. Just whatever makes sense. Like a calculation, not a dream. "Listen," I said, leaning forward. "I've been thinking about wedding gifts. Your mother and I always planned to help you with a house down payment when the time came. I know Charleston real estate is insane right now, but Dad, you don't have to." "I want to. You're all I've got, honey. Let me do this." Her eyes went glassy. She blinked fast, looked away. "Thank you." We talked for another 20 minutes. Surface things. Her latest case. A corporate merger dispute, my Trad Street project, the weather. All the while, I watched her fingers fidget with the coffee cup handle, twisting the ceramic back and forth. She'd done that as a kid when something worried her before piano recital. Before the ESATs, before telling me she'd crash my car into a mailbox at 16. When she finally stood to leave, I walked her to the door, then followed her out to the driveway. The November air had teeth. I put my hand on her shoulder, meaning to say something reassuring, something fatherly. She leaned into the touch, held there for 3 seconds longer than usual. Thanks for being so understanding, Dad. Understanding about what? She opened her car door. Just everything. See you Thursday. I watched her back out, correct the angle, drive away with her usual precision restored. The tail lights disappeared around the corner onto Meeting Street, and I stood there in my driveway while the afternoon leaked into evening. Inside, I moved through the house turning on lights. Old habit. I hated coming home to darkness. The place was too big for one person, really. 3 stories of Charleston's single house, 14T ceilings, rooms I barely used anymore, but it was mine. Built in 1847, renovated by me over 15 years. Every floorboard, every window, every piece of crown molding had passed through my hands. I paused in the dining room. Next Thursday, this table would seat 3 instead of 2. Brandon Mitchell. I'd met him twice. Once at the engagement party Sarah threw at her apartment. Once for a quick lunch downtown where he'd spent half the meal on his phone. Real estate developer, confident, successful from what Sarah said. In my study, I pulled out my phone and texted her. Looking forward to Thursday. It'll be good to really talk. Her response came within seconds. Me too, Dad. Thank you for understanding. That word again, understanding. I stared at the message, then set the phone down and returned to my blueprints, but the lines wouldn't focus. The measurements blurred. Outside my window, the live oak branches kept scratching against the glass. The turkey had been in the oven since morning, filling the house with the smell of rosemary and butter. I'd set the dining table with the good china, white porcelain with delicate blue edging that had belonged to Catherine. Hadn't used it in 3 years. The crystal glasses caught afternoon light from the bay windows, throwing small rainbows across the tablecloth. By 3:30, I'd changed into pressed slacks and a charcoal button-down. Checked my reflection in the hall mirror. 62 years old, mostly gray, but I still had my hair and most of my teeth. Good enough. The doorbell rang at 4 exactly. Sarah came in first, wearing a burgundy dress I'd never seen before. Behind her, Brandon Mitchell emerged from her BMW like he was stepping onto a stage. Navy suit that probably cost $3,000. Hairstyled with product that caught the light. And the watch, I noticed it immediately. Rolex, the kind you saw in magazine ads featuring yachts and helicopters. Russell, he extended his hand, gripped mine hard enough to make a point. Great to finally have a real conversation. Sarah talks about you constantly. All good things, I hope. Welcome. Come in, please. He moved through my entryway with appraising eyes, taking in the restored heart pine floors. The original plaster work, the curved staircase leading up to the second floor. Beautiful place. Must be worth what? $800,000 in this market. Sarah's hand tightened on her purse strap. I don't really think about it that way, I said. It's home. In the dining room, I carved the turkey with the bone-handled knife my father had given me 40 years ago. Precise cuts the way he'd taught me. I served Brandon first, guest of honor, and watched him take the plate without a word of thanks. Dinner began civilly enough. We talked about the weather, the traffic on I-26, the Charleston restaurant scene. Then Brandon found his rhythm. I've got a deal pending that'll change everything, he announced, gesturing with his fork. The silver came within an inch of Sarah's wine glass. She caught the stem reflexively, steadied it, set it down carefully. Premium waterfront development. 50 units starting at $1.2 million each. That's ambitious, I said, passing the sweet potato casserole. Do you have the financing in place? Almost there. Banks love me, he grinned, showing perfectly white teeth. And once I land the historic district contract, everything falls into place. I paused, serving spoon in midair. Historic district? I thought you didn't value old architecture. I value money. Historic designation means tax credits. He took a large bite of turkey, chewed while he talked. Charleston's sitting on untapped potential. These old buildings, sure, they're pretty, but they're not optimized. You could fit 3 modern townhomes where one historic house sits. But then you lose what makes Charleston special, I said, keeping my voice level. The character, the history. Character doesn't pay mortgages. Progress does. Sarah set her fork down. Some things are worth more than profit margins. Brandon reached over and patted her hand like she was a child. Babe, you're too sentimental. That's why you're a lawyer, not a developer. The table went quiet, except for the scrape of silverware on china. I watched Sarah withdraw into herself, shoulders curving inward. She picked at her green beans, moving them around her plate without eating. Brandon filled the silence by talking about his company, Mitchell Properties, and the deals he had lined up for next year. Luxury condos, waterfront parcels, a partnership with a firm in Myrtle Beach. Every sentence included a dollar figure. Every story positioned him as the smartest person in the room. When Sarah tried to mention a preservation case she was working on, he cut her off. Babe, they don't want to hear about work. My jaw tightened. I bit down on a response. Not my place. Not yet. She was 30 years old, a junior partner at a prestigious firm. If she wanted to handle this, she would. Halfway through the meal, Brandon excused himself. Sorry, important email. Work never stops. He wandered into the front parlor, phone in hand. Through the doorway, I could see him scrolling. Not email, social media, Instagram, from the way his thumb moved. Sarah and I cleared plates in silence. In the kitchen, she scraped leftovers into containers without meeting my eyes. He's stressed about the waterfront deal, she said quietly. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. She knew what I was thinking. Back at the table, Brandon returned and launched into another story. This one involved outbidding a competitor for a property in Mount Pleasant. He smiled when he described how the other developer nearly cried when the contract fell through. By the time I brought out the pumpkin pie, my patience had worn thin, but I smiled, played the gracious host, poured coffee. Sarah volunteered to cut the dessert in the kitchen, escaping again. Brandon checked his phone again. The screen lit his face in blue-white light. Sorry, he said without looking up. Client. I stood, folded my napkin. No problem. I need to grab my phone from the car myself. Got a message earlier about a Monday meeting. I'll be right back. Brandon nodded, barely registering my words. In the front hall, I reached for my blazer, then stopped. It was cold outside, November night, settling in, and the blazer was thin. I opened the closet and grabbed my canvas work jacket instead. Faded khaki, paint stained from job sites, the one I wore when inspecting renovations. Warm, practical. I shrugged into it, pulled the collar up, and stepped outside. The street was darker than I expected. Gas street lamps cast pools of amber light every 30 feet, but between them shadows pulled thick. My car sat at the curb, driver's side facing away. I walked down the brick path, hands in my jacket pockets, just another figure in old clothes moving through the Charleston evening. Behind me, inside the house, I heard Sarah's voice from the kitchen, humming something while she worked. The sound faded as I reached the sidewalk, 30 feet to the car. I fished for my keys. The November air smelled like wood smoke and the salt marsh 2 blocks east. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. A car alarm chirped as someone locked their vehicle. I pulled out my keys, pressed the unlock button. The interior light flickered on, illuminating the empty driver's seat where my phone waited. My phone screen glowed in the car's interior. 2 missed messages from Gerald Patterson about Monday's meeting. The historic courthouse renovation had hit a snag with the marble supplier. I'd deal with it tomorrow. I was about to close the door when I heard footsteps behind me. Deliberate, confident, the kind of walk that announced ownership of space. Hey, old man, step away from that car. I turned confused. Brandon stood 15 feet away, a leather cigar case in one hand, smoke curling from something expensive between his fingers. The street lamp flickered above us, throwing his face into alternating light and shadow. "Excuse me, the BMW." He gestured with the cigar, ash falling onto the brick sidewalk. "That's my girlfriend's car, and I don't want people like you hanging around it." "People like me." I looked down at my canvas jacket, paint-stained and faded. Looked back up at his $3,000 suit. I don't care what you were doing. Move along." The smell of his cigar reached me. Cuban, illegal, expensive, the kind of detail that told you everything about someone's relationship with rules. "You don't understand." He stepped closer, invading the space between us with practiced aggression. "I understand perfectly. You see expensive cars. You get ideas. Not on my watch." My heart kicked harder. Not from fear, from the sheer absurdity of being mistaken for a threat on my own street. "Young man, you're making a mistake. The only mistake is you still standing here." He was 3 feet away now, close enough that I could see the glint of his Rolex catching street light. Close enough to smell bourbon on his breath mixing with cigar smoke. I opened my mouth to explain, to tell him who I was, to defuse this ridiculous confrontation before it escalated further. Then his hands hit my chest. The shove wasn't violent exactly, but it was forceful, deliberate. My shoulders struck the car behind me. My phone slipped from my grip, clattered onto the brick. The sound echoed down the empty street. "You hear me, old fool?" His voice carried the sharp satisfaction of someone asserting dominance. "Get lost before I call security." I steadied myself against the car, breath coming shorter. "There is no security. This is a residential. Then I'll handle it myself." "You want me to, Brandon?" One word, ice cold, cutting through the November air like a blade. He spun toward the voice. I looked past him to the house. Sarah stood at the top of the brick steps, frozen. 2 dessert plates in her hands, my late wife's china, white with delicate blue edging. Her face held an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, something colder, something final. "Sarah, baby, there was this guy." "That's my father." The plates slipped from her hands. They hit the brick steps and exploded into white fragments. The sound punctuated her words like a judge's gavel. Brandon's face drained of color. Actually drained. I watched the blood leave his cheeks, his lips. Watched him transform from aggressive to desperate in the space between heartbeats. "What?" "No, I didn't." "The jacket." "I couldn't see." "You pushed my father." Her voice remained flat. "Controlled." The attorney speaking, not the daughter. "You called him a fool." "I didn't know." "How could I know?" "He was dressed like what, Brandon?" She descended 1 step. "Just 1. Like someone you can treat like trash." He moved toward the stairs, hands raised in supplication, the cigar still burned between his fingers. He hadn't dropped it, hadn't even noticed he still held it. "Please, Sarah, let me explain." She looked at him for a long moment. I watched her face in the porch light, saw something shift behind her eyes, a decision made, a door closing. "You're finished." 2 words delivered with surgical precision. Then she turned. Not quickly. With mechanical precision. 1 foot then the other. She walked back through my front door and disappeared into the house's interior, leaving the door standing open behind her. A gesture of dismissal more powerful than slamming it. Brandon stood paralyzed on the walkway. His mouth opened and closed. Sounds came out, fragments of words, half-formed protests. "Baby, wait. We can wrestle, sir." "I apologize." I said nothing. Just stood against my car. Phone still on the ground at my feet, watching him unravel in the flickering street light. He took a step toward the house, stopped, looked back at me. His face held the expression of someone realizing they'd stepped off a cliff and were only now understanding the fall. The November wind picked up, leaves skittered across the brick. Somewhere down the street, that dog barked again.